we on Talking Joe?
Brand new.
Hey, we're talking brand new Joe. Hey, we're on a brand new show. Deep dives, blow by blow. Spotting Uzis and crossbow. Like a buzzball or a pogo. Got ninjas like Dom Shadow. Comics are how I spend my dough. We're coming to you in stereo. It's time for Talking Joe. With Mark and Tim, here we go.
Brand new.
Talking Joe is on the air.
Hey, it's me, Mark, and welcome to Talking Joe, the G.I. Joe Comics podcast. Now, today we are talking about G.I. Joe issue 2, but I will not be doing that thing alone. As always, I will be joined by my co-host. It's a real American Tim. It's Tim Finn.
Hello, Mark, and hello, listeners.
Hey, Tim. Now, lots been going on since last month. It feels like it's been way over a month since the last issue came out. And I went back and I checked. Last issue came out 13th of November. So it's just, I think, 1 month and 1 week. But yeah, it's been a wait. It's felt like a time to get this next issue.
Well, remember, with 52 weeks in a year, there are 4 months per year with a fifth Wednesday, with a fifth week. And so sometimes the publishers will publish a fun event, some extra comics for that fifth week, because nothing is regularly scheduled to come out quarterly, except for DC's Superman, the Man of Tomorrow in the early 2000s. But so yes, sometimes it really is more than 4 weeks between issues of G.I. Joe, and not because a writer, an artist, a colorist, an editor, a printer, caught a cold and was behind schedule.
And sometimes it just feels longer because you really want to read that next issue of the comic book because it is so exciting.
Did that guy die? The guy at the end of issue 1?
He died. I need to wait a month to find out if he's dead or dead, and he may potentially even longer to see if he, is a zombie or something else. But there's that other G.I. Joe comic that comes out between issues of this one. And also, my G.I. Joe itch and my Transformers itch are similar. So if I have a G.I. Joe itch and I can scratch a Transformers itch, the G.I. Joe itch isn't as bad. And folks, if you haven't been reading, there goes my piece of paper with my notes. If you haven't been reading Void Rivals, a bunch of season 3 Transformers characters from 1986, 1987 are showing up in Void Rivals. And now I'm going to get my piece of paper. And maybe if we were in the let's say early 90s, they might have for the recent issues of Void Rivals, they might say Void Rivals featuring Cobra Law. That's the subtitle.
That's true. There is a certain amount of restraint that Skybound is showing by not putting the G.I. Joe logo or the Transformers logo all over the Void Rivals cover. All you get is the very small, and I would argue slightly hard to read, EU logo type, the Energon Universe symbol on the top left. And also in 2 cases now, a Transformer just taking up the entire cover by himself with no background and none of those Void Rivals aliens. Just Springer or just Hot Rod.
So there's been all sorts going on since we last spoke.
We have received at Hub Comics our Battle Action Force hardcovers, and if you're listening to this episode, Mark just grabbed volume 1 of his with its hot foil stamping on the logo and spot UV varnish on Baron Ironblood on the cover. This is not a dust jacketed hardcover, and it is very pretty. And he's opening it and making faces, And so all right, so we got these books in the mail at my store yesterday. I have not been there yet, so I have not been able to open them up and make faces for some camera like Mark was just doing. But I am going there after I record this episode.
Very good. Yeah. So in the UK, we received these a few weeks ago. Over in the States, they've just been shipping, and as we record, they have been landing on people's doorsteps. So potentially 3 of these big bad new book smelling hardcovers have been landing. Also in comics news, we have announcement of the hardcover, the deluxe hardcover for Codename G.I. Joe. I'll see if I can present this and share it on the screen. So on the screen now is the front cover with looks like a nice bit of foil for the logo with Duke on the front cover and a sort of montage of other images from those comics behind him. So this hardcover sort of follows the Skybound publishing model, which is essentially monthly comics. At the end of say 5 or so comics coming out, they'll do a nice little trade paperback, but not too many frills in that trade paperback.
And by not too many, you mean none?
None.
No introduction, no afterward, no sketchbook pages.
No comprehensive set of covers. No.
Not variant covers, and not even covers. If you get the Duke paperback with all 5 issues, the front of it will have a cover, and then the back of it will have part of a cover, and then the first page with some title information will have part of a cover, and that's it. So you are missing about 2 covers out of your 5 covers. I have not picked up a Skybound hardcover in a long time, and when I was doing that, I guess it was Invincible or Walking Dead, so a long time ago. Mark, do you remember offhand the Skybound hardcovers, the regular ones, which have 10 or 12 issues, and the Skybound Ultimate collections, which I think have 18 issues? Those have 3 story arcs, 3 paperbacks worth. Do they have the covers?
I believe so. I think maybe sometimes they might group, depending on the number of covers, they might maybe group them onto onto a page. But they tend to be fairly comprehensive, of like having a cover ballot gallery in the background, some interviews, some behind the scenes materials of sketches or that kind of thing. So it tends to be a nice deluxe treatment, and this particular hardcover will collect Duke 1 through 5, Cobra Commander 1 through 5, and material from the Energon Universe 2024 special, which is kind of like a coda, like after the credit scenes for Duke, because that has that Baroness sequence where he recruits her, and also the end of credit sequence for Cobra Commander, because that they have that Cobra La kind of sequence in that issue as well. So it's Duke and Cobra Commander essentially, which implies that there will be a Codename G.I. Joe Book 2 featuring Scarlet and Destro.
Yes, this cover for the Codename G.I. Joe Book 1, right? So we're not going to call it Volume 1. We're calling it Book 1 in Skybound Energon Universe parlance. The word volume is reserved for 5 issues or 6 issues for soft covers, and book is reserved for hardcovers with 10 or 12 issues. So the cover of this Codename G.I. Joe Book 1 hardcover has a Tom Riley drawing of Duke, and I don't remember if this is the part of is this what Riley drew for the poster where it was 4 characters? Or is this the artwork that's used for the corner box on all of the Duke covers? Either way, it is a Tom Riley, let's say, promotional drawing of Duke with a machine gun, and he's got some armor on his chest, but otherwise he's in recognizable Duke colors. And then, as Mark said, behind him are some panels from the comics within, not any of the cover artwork. and 2 or 3 of them are from the Duke miniseries interiors, and 2 or 3 of them are from the Cobra Commander miniseries interiors, including one of them shows Megatron's smiling face. So this book does have the EU logo on the bottom, and it does not say the word Transformers on it anywhere. It doesn't say featuring Megatron, although who knows what the back cover is. But besides some humans and a machine gun on this front cover, you do see a smiling evil robot.
Indeed. So this has a cover price of about 39. Well, actually, I've got it's come up in pounds. It says £39 on blooming Amazon, coming up with geographic specific stuff just for me. And it has got a solicitation date here of June 2025, so this summer, and it will be 256 pages. And I believe that there will be at some point an announcement of a variant cover edition for this. There is a Transformers equivalent of this deluxe treatment, and there was also a variant released for that.
And a Void Rivals hardcover with the first 2 arcs.
Right.
Was also announced. And these 3 books have a unified trade dress. They have the same sort of border shape on the front cover, where the logo goes, where the number goes, where the EU logo goes.
And while we're sort of on our deviation and talking about cool things, I can highlight a few other cool things, because we're in that season of year where lots of cool things are coming out. Lots of cool things are being sold on sales, and Mark is feeling depressed because he's got all of these cool things happening and no time on his hands to enjoy them. So just buys stuff and then sort of looks at it in the corner of his room, like the Super 7 figures have dropped in recent years. This is a particularly cool one. It's that comic book style bat, which has been miniaturized from the Ultimates version that Super 7 released. So it's exciting to see this new era for O-Ring being released. Mark also took a spin on his first ever Mezco 1/12 figures. So this is I got a Destro, which was on sale in the UK from, I think it was Comics and Cocktails. Amazing. I think this is a rabbit hole that is dangerous to go down, but I have gone down that rabbit hole.
I will just say, I'm sorry to be coy. I bought some art, bought some G.I. Joe art this week that came in the mail, and I'm sorry, I don't want to show you or tell you what it is because I'm feeling self-conscious about it, but it's cool, and it was not inexpensive. And Mark, what else did you buy?
The other cool thing that came through my door this week, again from Comics and Cocktails in the UK, on deep discount, it's a Super 7 Ultimates Duke, and I also have a Cobra Commander over in the, I think, I also have a Cobra Commander on the other side of the room. And we're also, there's not an elephant in the room, but there's an elephant-sized flying red skull behind me as well, because also in this last week, the Roboskull Mark II arrived in the post, and it is glorious. I've stuck it up with the glow-in-the-dark stickers. It's got flying glow-in-the-dark shooting jet eyeballs.
Do they? It's not spring loaded. You can pull them out, right?
That eyeball isn't spring loaded, and it's got figures with very accurate renditions of Marco Byrne as a Roboskull pilot.
Marco Byrne being one of the 2 principals of Skeletron, the company.
Indeed,
and who did a lot of work making this toy happen. Mark, just go back a second for our listeners who only know comics and not toys, or don't pay attention to crowdfunding campaigns or British toys. One sentence: what was and what is the Roboskull?
So the Robo Skull was a Palitoy exclusive Action Force toy designed by British toy maker Bob Breakin, who and it was this incredible Action Force toy, the GI Joe, the UK's a flying red skull. And it's beautiful and amazing. And I never had one as a kid, but always wanted one. In my adulthood, I have an original, and I now also have an upgraded Distant Future 2024 version.
These two guys, Ben Conway and Mark O'Byrne, started this company Skeletron, and they've brought on a couple other people. And they the name RoboSkull was available. It was not. I
believe that it wasn't under copyright or trademark or those things. So they're able to scoop up all of this legalese IP stuff and sort of repurpose it without treading on people's toes. In the same way that I think Hasbro lost the license to various names in the 90s and 2000s and had to use things like Double Blast and Chameleon. And
2.5 years ago, there was a crowdfunding campaign from the company Skeletron for this new and improved, bigger RoboSkull flying red skull vehicle. And just one more sentence, and then we should talk about comics. It can fit 2 different sizes of action figures. Yes.
Yes. So it's got the regular 3 3/4, 4-inch figures, because they've done both. Actually, they did a little regular O-ring retro style figure, as well as the more modern style 4-inch figure, and then they're also making 6-inch figures, which will both of those scales will fit into the Robo Skull. They have an interchangeable seat, so you can have 1 big figure or 2 small figures. It's amazing. It's amazing, Tim.
We are not a toy review podcast, and I have toys. I don't really buy new toys or old toys. I just have some of my old toys, but. Skeletron is a presence at both of the G.I. Joe conventions that Mark and I tend to attend, and everyone who works for them is or seems great. And there was sort of an explosion last week in my Facebook feed of satisfied fans getting the RoboSkull in the mail and announcing it and posting photos. Okay, any more announcements? We're going to talk about G.I. Joe 2.
I've got this bloody great helicopter in my room, Tim, and I don't know what to do with it. It is massive.
Mark is holding the HasLab Dragonfly at the 6-inch classified scale. And Mark is not only holding it, I should say he's struggling to hold it because it's bigger than he is. And he can barely stand under its weight, and also its transparent cylindrical stand, so that you don't have to just have it sit. You can have it 5 inches up off your table.
And final thing, Tim. Here we go. It's Steel City Publishing. It is what they're calling these books now. It is the
Creating G.I. Joe.
Creating G.I. Joe, the first time they released it, which is what I've got in hand, they called it 3.75 Joe, and then they were able to work with Hasbro to get the license so they could change the name and use that. So it's a 15-volume set of books that goes into like the detail of the process of creating the original G.I. Joes, with just lots of amazing painted sort of presentation art, designs, turnarounds, all of these kind of things. And at the moment, and I've been on the fence about ordering these because they're not inexpensive books, but at the moment they are on sale, reduced for all 15 volumes with three slipcases, was $855 for the lot. Currently a winter sale, $389, so less than half price. So if you have been on the fence about these, haven't got them, now's a good time.
I have all of them. so I can't benefit from the sale. But I either lost one in my move, or I didn't order it when it was Kickstartered, which doesn't sound like me because I'm pretty sure I backed them all.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I'm going to this week at the sale price order the one that I seem to be missing. Also, Mark, you said Steel City Publishing, and let's give credit where it's due. Steel City Publishing is one person, Dan Klingensmith, and these books are his efforts. Okay, can we talk about G.I. Joe issue 2?
Yeah, let's do that thing. Right. Shall we start with the covers?
Yes. This is where a British boy
do we
says,
normally... Yeah.
This is where a British boy says, let's have a look at the cover gallery. Or let's have a look at the covers.
Let's have a look at the covers in the gallery.
I forgot to say, Tim, there's more than just this issue's covers. Because in the intervening time between us talking for probably close to 2 hours about the covers for the last the last one, a further set of covers was released. I believe, let me just double check my count. It was basically a further 15 covers was released subsequent to our coverage, specifically about issue 1 covers.
And
so
these are retailer variants, right? Or are 14 out of the 15 of them retailer variants?
Pretty much. There's a cover 1 reprint, which, as is the tradition, has come to us from Jason Howard. So we've got a Jason Howard Mercer and Risk, as well as a Patricia Martin with art, who's been doing some of the other variants as well, cover in that sort of like paper cut style that she has done, and the rest are all new retailer variants essentially.
When Marcus says paper cut, what he's describing is something with no outlines. So like Rock and Roll's baseball cap is just one flat field of color in the shape of baseball cap, and then each eyebrow is an eyebrow shape as if cut out of like beige blonde colored paper. All three of these are great. Oh, what's this one?
So then we've got a further, I'm not going to describe them all, but head on over to the League of Comic Geeks, who has currently got a count of 61 covers for issue 1 of G.I. Joe. So I'm just flicking through a few of the ones that were released. This is the Creighton Klein one that were released since our episode on them. A Chameleon cover, because there wasn't enough of those, and a few Baronesses ones, including David Mack, because there certainly weren't enough Baroness covers either. And Top Shelf Comics released a set of 4 in their Blind Bag series, which included this Alex Sinclair one. But I think probably the most exciting of all of these was the cover which was given to people who attended the Skybound screening of G.I. Joe, which...
the movie. The animated
G.I.
movie.
Joe, the movie, the animated movie. They put on a special screening of G.I. Joe, the animated movie.
This was in Los Angeles the week that issue 1 came out.
Attended by a lot of the Skybound crew. And for everyone that attended, they were given this comic with a cover inspired by the G.I. Joe movie poster.
G.I. Joe
with
animated movie poster. Sorry.
still animated.
Because there are 4 G.I. Joe movies.
And this had art by Tony Fleeks, which looks very good and very much in the style of that movie poster, with the composition staying mostly the same, but being replaced with these G.I. Joe Energon Universe designs.
Mark, if there's an app on your computer that can put $ over my eyeballs live while we're doing the video portion at the very beginning of this episode, just while we look at covers, please turn that on now, because hey everyone, I have one of these. And it's
what?
for sale. Okay, let's talk about issue 2.
Ding, 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 ding. Oh, good grief. How did you get one of these?
A nice person gave it to me.
I don't know any of them. Okay, very good. So now we're done with all that preamble. Let's talk about issue 1 covers proper. And I'm going to go to turn off.
Issue 2 covers proper?
Sorry. Let's do that instead, Tim. I'm going to turn off my my camera now.
Cover A is drawn and colored by Tom Riley, and in many ways, it's as different as can be from his cover for issue 1, which was wraparound and outside and during the day and featured many characters just standing there, although cool. This one, issue 2, is few characters, just 2, Duke and the Baroness, inside. And they're not just standing there, they are using their weapons and also getting shot at. They are in front of, Duke and Baroness are in front of a metal wall inside what feels like a, G.I. Joe or Cobra headquarters, because there are some horizontal and diagonal lines which say, metal wall tech, like in, on the Death Star or in a science lab in movies or in G.I. Joe cartoons. We are looking up at Duke and the Baroness. Duke is holding that modern weird machine gun that he seems to be using in this new series. The cover is very much blue. The background is all different types of blue with some really nice sort of noise, texture that Riley has put into the metal wall. And yet his colors on the 2 characters are, just 2 or 3 colors per object, just two colors for the yellow of Duke's shirt, right? Where it's yellow and then where there's a shadow. 3 colors for Duke's skin. There's sort of the middle tone Caucasian, there's the dark Caucasian for where the shadows are, and there's some white highlights. So that beautiful flat coloring. On the top right, there's a black, there's compositionally a black triangle, which is to say that they're actually standing near the corner of a wall, and that, maybe sort of they could keep running and duck behind that corner. I really like this cover, and it's very, it pops really nicely. And it does not literally show a scene from the issue, but it is highly representative of scenes that happen in the issue where these 2 characters and others are fighting for their lives inside. Cover B is drawn by David Finch and colored by Dave McCaig. It's Rock and Roll fighting Mercer. They are outside in the rubble of a bombed out city. There are buildings sort of at diagonals behind them, small portions of buildings that are all cracked and crumbly, missing their windows. These 2 characters are in the foreground. We basically only see Rock and Roll from the waist up, and Mercer is sort of from the knees up. They are both, they both have knives. Both knives have blood on them. Each one has cut the other and has just slashed or is about to slash. Rock and Roll has a machine gun that is firing at the moment, but Mercer's knocking the machine gun out of the way. And then on the top left, there's a foreground element of a diagonal sort of shaft of, crumbly wall from another building with a little bit of rebar sticking out of it. So Finch creates sort of a more closed composition where your eye kind of stays inside sort of this parallelogram of stuff on the top left, and then the logo, and then these 2 guys on the bottom. Finch adds a lot of detail for, muscles and ribbing in sort of body costume armor and clothing folds. And his style is, as usual, quite mannered. He's really adding a lot of, 1990s comic style details to create texture and sort of a worn quality to faces and fabric and stone. Even that tire that's behind the 2 guys under Mercer's knee. His Mercer is not a huge, jacked, muscular guy. He seems actually a little lean in the sort of size of his torso and trunk and legs. I would like a bigger Mercer from Finch to match sort of what we think of the character and also how Riley draws him on the inside. Two other things of note about this cover. One, this scene does not happen in this issue because one of the guys on the cover is already dead by the time this issue starts. And so this cover serves as a sort of representation of what happened at the end of the last issue, where these two guys squared off, kind of, though it was not outside on the ground amongst a bombed out city. It was, on the 12th floor of a building. What it also does is it sort of holds the secret that one of these characters did die at the end of issue 1, because before anyone could read issue 1, the covers for issue 2 were made public. One last thing I'll say, another thing that's happening here in the colors by Dave McCaig, and I should point out, this is the 105th time Dave McCaig has colored a David Finch cover, because they're the regular cover team for The Walking Dead Deluxe. And of course, Dave McCaig is coloring the insides of that book. What he does here, and what he does a lot, is he separates elements with warm and cool. So on this cover, the background is all blue-green. It's all a light aqua. And the characters have a lot of, so that's cool. And the characters have a lot of warm in them, right? Their skin is almost orange. And there is a yellow-orange cast on their costumes, even if you can't quite see it. And having that separation really makes the characters pop. And it happens the same with that pipe on the bottom left in front of Rock and Roll, and it happens the same with that diagonal shaft of debris on the top left behind the logo.
Very good. And yeah, inked by superstar inker Danny Miki as well. The original art for this is on the Essential Sequential website for, I think, something like $6,000.
I do wonder, is that inks only? Is that inks on Blue Line, or is that inks on top of the pencils and the pencils were erased and that really is the only piece of art? Because I
am not sure.
I know that sometimes Danny Miki has inked. Anyway, okay. Cover C is the 1:10 ratio variant. It's drawn and colored by David Nakayama. It continues this 4-part connecting cover, which we saw the first part of for issue 1, and we'll see more of for issues 3 and 4. It's all female characters. Issue 1 had the Baroness. Here, issue 2 has CoverGirl, and she's parachuting in and just inches away from setting down on the rubble during this battle. You can see a couple straps going up and off the image from sort of her shoulders. I'm not sure how this actually works, because it sort of looks like her coat has the harness, because I see like a hoop, a metal hoop like that you'd latch a carabiner onto on one of them. I'm not going to worry about it, because in G.I. Joe they also have jetpacks, and real jetpacks would burn your legs. And CoverGirl's hair is blowing in the wind. There's an explosion behind her. There's a bombed out part of a building in the distance, and there's rubble and sort of brick and stone on the bottom left and the bottom right, and blue lasers are blasting in from the right. Cover D is the 1:25 ratio variant. This is drawn by Travis Moore and colored by Adriano Lucas. There's an explosion in the background. We've seen this same explosion and the same type of cover for all of the G.I. Joe related Energon Universe 1:25 variant covers. That's all 4 miniseries and now the monthly. And this is Clutch, and he's running toward us, but looking sort of past us over our right shoulder, holding a machine gun. And it looks really sharp. And if you didn't know that Travis Moore drew this, if you didn't know that Tom Riley didn't draw it, you might think that Tom Riley drew it. This has a similar sort of amount of detail and openness to it. It sort of agrees stylistically. Cover E is the 1 in 50. It's drawn and colored by Otto Schmidt. Otto Schmidt is fun trivia question, everyone. If you're at Comic Book Trivia, I don't know that he's the only artist who has, but he's certainly the most recent artist who has, within the same year or two, drawn both Marvel's Archer Hawkeye and also DC's Archer Green Arrow. This is Chameleon and Stalker falling through the air. They are both at diagonals, as are the city buildings in the background behind Stalker. In the far distance, there are silhouettes for 3 or 4 helicopters, and Stalker, interestingly, is in kind of a blue camo, not his traditional green. He does have that orange cord, which I was asking Mark about a month or two ago, which Mark decided was for sipping water, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like a camelback kind of hose connector, it looks like.
Yes, whereas I thought that it was some kind of sort of electrical power for his laser gun. Stalker, both of his knees are bent and both of his legs are sort of cocked. Both of his hands are holding knives. I'm starting to realize, Mark, if you flip this cover upside down, are the buildings behind Chameleon also sort of coming coming up from sort of where? Are they not sort of both falling down to the bottom right? Are they, in fact, is this like a playing card, like a jack or a queen in a deck of cards, and sort of the top half of the image is like up and down, and then the bottom half of the image, if you flip it, is up and down?
Yeah, it kind of looks a bit like that. Like, maybe I like that playing card idea. I don't know that the perspective could actually work in real life in terms of buildings coming up from the bottom like that and also down from the top. So that's an interesting thought.
Schmidt has a little bit of an angular quality to his faces, and I love his drawings, and I really want him to draw more comics that I am reading. That Hawkeye miniseries he did was great, and I didn't read his Green Arrow, but it looked great. So if he wants to draw an arc for G.I. Joe or Transformers, great.
Presumably, if he worked on Green Arrow recently, that would have been written by Joshua Williamson.
No.
Okay.
It was a previous series. It wasn't this past year. It was I think three or 4 years ago.
Okay.
But yeah, he should definitely work with Joshua Williamson. And then just one last thing about the colors here. The backgrounds are sort of white, yellow, pink, red, pastel. So it sort of feels like morning in a city. With all this shards of broken glass around them. Okay, the cover F is the 1 in 100 variant. This is drawn and colored by Derek Chu. This has been digitally painted, so there are no black outlines from line work. This is 3 Cobra Valkyries. One is front and center, looking at us, walking toward us, menacingly holding a big machine gun, and the other 2 are a little out of focus and in the background and sort of obstructed, so you only see a little bit of a helmet, a little bit of a shoulder, and then there's a lot of fire and explosion and smoke and flying sparks all around and sort of blowing in the wind in that sort of like, I think it might actually be a Photoshop filter. They'll make something out of focus as if it's slightly blowing in the wind, or as if the camera is like zooming in slightly and also taking a long exposure at the same time. Mark, we'll talk about who these characters are when we get to the inside, but just a quick reminder, what are the Cobra Valkyries?
They were released very recently as a G.I. Joe classified figure, as a 2-pack. So they're sort of newly invented Cobras, looking very much like sort of a female Cobra infantry type character.
So an upgrade of the basic 1982 blue Cobra soldier, right? Because of all the extra bits and gear for classified, but they're women. And remind me, was there like a 2-pack in 2010 or 2015 of women Cobra soldiers? Like a little
Yes.
army builder thing at the 25th anniversary size.
Yes, there was.
party?
There was. I'm struggling to think of the name of the character off the top of my head, but yes, there has been some releases of female Cobra troopers. Yeah, I believe it might have been like a convention exclusive or some such.
Okay, but this is the first time, 2024, that the word Valkyrie has been used
Yes.
as a name.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then there's a V. There's a V on the helmet.
Mhm. But it's also like the V on a Cobra officer's helmet as well. Although yes, I guess the V here could signify Valkyrie.
Very good. Okay, and then quite.
This is I was just going to say this is a foil cover as well, so it probably looks pops even more in person.
I might politely disagree. The foil that Skybound used for the Tom Riley G.I. Joe 1 cover of the whole team, the wraparound, and also the Jen Bartel portrait of Chameleon with no logo, they are shiny, but the saturation of the colors, they're actually dulled down a little bit because of the foil. So it's not like that gold foil on the front of your Battle Action Force book, which is like shiny and highly reflective. I think it's sort of moderately reflective. But yes, it is a bell and whistle that does look different than other covers. Someone on Facebook.
I just did a little fact check here to see some of the examples of the female Cobra Troopers. There was a Cobra Trooper released by the Collectors Club in 2017, and then was, I think, re-released as a and that was released as a 3-pack.
And these were just in blue. These were sort of normal Cobra soldiers, but women.
Yeah, essentially.
Okay. Someone on Facebook pointed out that they were surprised that Skybound for issue 2 of G.I. Joe was publishing a 1 in 250 ratio variant, meaning a store, a retailer, would have to order 250 copies in any combination of covers A and B in order to qualify to be able to order one of this cover G. But that also means that then you can order up to 25 copies of cover C, the 1 in 10. And I was also surprised because that high number, 250, feels like something you sort of save for issue 1 and a well you don't go back to, especially since this cover image drawn by Jorge Corona, who drew the second arc of Daniel Warren Johnson's Energon Universe Transformers and is about to come back for part of what will be the third arc. That issue just came out. Okay. Transformers 15. Corona's back on the book. And then colored by Mike Spicer. This is not, this doesn't feel like a highly desirable cover with either like a very, very cool drawing of the Baroness or Cobra Commander and Destro, like threatening Duke. This is the new guy, Risk, who I think Skybound is trying to make a big deal of, but no one knows who this guy is. And so maybe that's it. I have heard anecdotally that in the last 5 years, when Marvel and DC have introduced a new character, speculators who go to comic book stores on Wednesday to buy a brand new issue and either keep it or immediately sell it, right? Whether it's the variant or not, such speculators are much more interested in the last 5 years with first appearances, right? Like, Eddie Brock has a clone, or Eddie Brock's kid has a clone, or, first appearance, right? And suddenly that issue of Venom like sells out. So maybe that sort of was the hope here, like, everyone's going to get in on this new character, Risk. So let's give him the highly desirable cover for issue number 2. It's a good drawing. I do like it. It's a little bit flat. Risk is standing straight up and down. We see him in the foreground, waist up, and on his hands and wrists are some sort of what would you call these, Mark? Electrical.
Yeah, like electric knuckle dusters or something. Yeah.
I think they're for punching someone with a bolt of electricity. And so he's holding his sort of fist up, and then his other hand is sort of adjusting it while crackles of electricity burst out from it, and he's lit from it. So his right side is bright, and his left side is a little bit. His left side is bright, and his right side is a little bit in shadow. And then he's standing in front of this, let's say, concrete wall with no other details. There's no doorway. There's no corner. There's no air conditioning duct work. There's no signage. But behind him, on the sort of right 1/3 of the cover, is a crumpled Crimson Guardsman whose head has just been punched into that concrete wall, and he's buckling forward, still holding his machine gun. And you can tell that his red helmet has been smashed. And Risk has this impish look on his face. He's sort of looking smart and cocky with a half smile. And I do like this cover. If this was sort of a regular cover like A and B, it's not the one that I would buy. And partly because I don't know who this guy is, and partly because it's a good drawing, but it's not sort of the most exciting cover. You know, it doesn't have the bold diagonals of Tom Riley's cover A. It's not a fight scene. It sort of feels like the moment after a punchline, which hits very differently than, you know, two guys fighting on cover B or guy and gal blasting on cover A. Mark, are there retailers?
I was going to say this one reminds me a little bit of the style of Paul Pope in just the way that the face looks and some of those detailings are done. Just in between that last point as well, I did remember as well that there was this other G.I. Joe female Cobra trooper, which was called the Night Stalkers. They were released in the 2007 International G.I. Joe Convention set, Tanks for the Memories, which included a number of goodies and baddies, as well as multiple Cobra kind of troopers also, in black.
Wait, I have a name. Remind me who this was. Vipra? Was this a vehicle driver?
I don't think that this one was named. I think they were just called Cobra Officer and Cobra Trooper.
I'm thinking of someone else. There was a figure named Vipra, Vypra. Was that the the 99 Toys R Us exclusive? What am I thinking of?
The Vipra was released twice. Once as like a Jinx recolor in blue.
Okay. Yes.
And
ninja.
then
She's a ninja. Folks, Mark and I are just going to interrupt ourselves every 10 minutes for the rest of the episode as we recall additional female Cobra troopers that have been introduced into the toy line and the comic since 1982. Mark, are there any retailer exclusive covers for issue 2 of G.I. Joe?
There are. That's enough of that. So we've got a Baroness cover. In fact, we have two of them, a regular one and a foil one. We have a Baroness by John Burns. This is through 616 Comics, released as regular and foil. And then Matthew Waite has done connected covers for issue 1 and issue 2 in this kind of video game chibi kind of style. So the first issue had Duke and Co pointing to the right, and here we have Cobra Commander and crew pointing to the left. And that is the retailer covers, Tim.
Plot breakdown, credits?
Credits. So this issue is brought to us by the creative team of writer Joshua Williamson, artist Tom Riley, colorist Geordie Belair, letterer Russ Wooten, editor Ben Abernathy, logo and production design Andre Juarez, and production Ashby Florence. Let's find out what happens on the inside of this issue with a plot breakdown. Cobra's attack on the scientific compound continues. Rock and Roll lies on the ground, his body smouldering following the blasts he received from the Cobra Viper's Energon laser rifles. Duke rallies a counterattack in the captured Fang. As Duke lays the smackdown on Mercer, Cobra Commander's Valkyries arrive, shooting the wounded. Baroness intervenes to rescue the downed Stalker. And as Clutch uses a captured laser rifle, Cobra Commander triggers a self-destruct on the device. In the resulting chaos, Mercer escapes in a Cobra copter with the mysterious Energon Transformers Cybertronian Shard. The Joes assess the damage. Rock and Roll is killed in action. Stalker and Covergirl are badly wounded, and Clutch is missing. Hawk introduces Duke to the newly arrived Guerrero La Casa, codename Risk, who immediately rubs Duke and Baroness the wrong way, resulting in, let's say, an altercation. Meanwhile, at Springfield, Cobra Commander outlines the next stage of his plans to capture Dr. Archibald Monev and his brainwave scanner. Listening in is Clutch, disguised as a Viper. Tim, where would you like to start on this one?
Well, okay. Chronologically, I just want to point out. If listeners, if you're looking at the image that Mark has put on this version, it's a close-up of the big splash panel from later in the issue where someone is flying a Fang helicopter, and I'm just so struck by the very cool color work that Jordi Belair has done. You can see really subtly that dot screen pattern underneath a lot of the colors, and there's yellows and peaches and this sort of dull blue. Great. Okay. On page 1, I think I see some dry brush in panel 2 for that smoke. I think Tom Riley is drawing not just with a pen and a brush where the pen has been dipped in ink and then immediately lines are drawn, or the brush has been dipped in ink and then immediately lines are drawn. With dry brush, you dip your brush in ink, and then on another scrap of paper, you get most of the ink off. And then you make a line, and your brush hairs aren't sopping wet. And so a lot of the sort of texture of the paper sort of is revealed or is visible through the ink that doesn't completely coat it in one sort of swoosh or movement. And Tom Riley did not invent this, but this is a nice reminder that this has been drawn on paper and not digitally. B, dry brush is a technique that you have to be good at to pull off. And C, it's not something we've really seen in G.I. Joe comics. So just a fun little art extra there as we're looking at Rock and Roll's corpse. So Mark, you want to talk about the death of a Joe?
Yeah, so last week we were talking about the fact that Rock and Roll had been blasted with these laser rifles. You are led to believe that would be a fatal blast. And I was, somewhat skeptical. I'm still slightly skeptical because, he's lying there. His body is steaming, but there's always a chance in comics. And at least CoverGirl thinks that there's a chance that she can help him. And then we do go on to see that panel later on with like a file, like a manila file with a photo of Rock and Roll, and it says Sergeant Craig McConnell killed in the line of duty protecting his team, and Duke is then shown to be upset around his loss. So all of the indications are there that he is dead, but in comics there is always a chance. I'm a little bit sad that that chance seems to be shrinking. That, you know,
is it possible that Hawk is faking Rock and Roll's death so that Rock and Roll can be on the other team with Flint and Lady J?
This is the thought that's crossing my mind. Is it potentially a big fake out? And I did in the last issue, I sort of speculated a little bit about that. Have we never seen Energon meeting human before? And after the events of that issue, I remembered that actually in Cobra Commander issue 4, he did blast Nemesis with this robotic hand blast, which I believe is meant to be, you know, fueled by Energon, and that took Nemesis down for the count. But I'm assuming that he is down but not out, and we will see him again at some point. But Nemesis is not, Rock and Roll. So
he's not a Homo sapien, right?
No.
Is he the same? He's not the same species.
No. He and also re-looking at Cobra Commander issue 4, it reminded me of the fact that Cobra Commander's glove is also not something that we've never seen before. It was seen in the in the pages of Cobra Commander issue 4 as a device that he puts onto his hand to then blast. Use, I think, basically, you know, those little Insecticon kind of robot things that he had as his weapons. He got those to combine onto his hand, and then he fueled it with Energon and then blasted Nemesis. So I think that in that sequence, you know, his hand is kind of permanently been fused with this kind of robotic claws, and that's what we then saw in issue 1.
I have more to say about G.I. Joe issue 2, page 1. Jordi Belair does really nice color work in the first 4 panels with these desaturated, grayed out sort of aquas and tans and peaches. And then in the final panel, when something changes, right? The good guys are down, and then all of a sudden there's a surprise, and a bunch of the bad guys get shot, and Mercer says, "What the bleep?" That whole panel, the foreground characters are colored in light orange and medium orange, almost as if they're lit up by all of that machine gun fire. And I don't think physically they could be illuminated that much, that uniformly, by all that machine gun fire coming from a Fang helicopter. And what Belair is doing here is she's sort of having it both ways. She's coloring these characters in a different plane, because they're in the foreground, to separate them from all the bluish grayish stuff behind them. And also sort of accentuating the light that is hitting them, which is from the blast from this helicopter, right? Which paid off when you turn the page and see this like 2/3 page splash of the big hero who is threatening to hijack the book, even though it's a team book, not a solo book. The hero saves the day, having commandeered a bad guy helicopter. Okay, 2 more things. One, in the very first panel of this issue, CoverGirl is starting to tear up as she says, "Rock and roll, no!" And that dialogue...
Is this where I play a jingle that doesn't exist, all about female characters in G.I. Joe crying?
Yes, yes. So I just want to point out that the lettering in Rock and Roll, no, lettering by Russ Wooten, is slightly diagonal, right? To show that she's, it's bigger, it's in maroon, and it's slightly diagonal. It's not a perfect left-right sort of line that the letters line up on. Okay, so in previous episodes, when we were reviewing early and middle issues of Devil's Due G.I. Joe from 2001 and 2005, there were 3 or 4 times when Scarlet or another G.I. Joe character would tear up or would cry and get emotional when something terrible happened, like an emotional betrayal, or maybe someone died or looked like they died. And it only happened with women. And I started picking on the Devil's Due writers for writing the women characters of G.I. Joe as sort of more emotional and less sort of, soldiering on and getting through it than the men. And it seems to happen again here now for the first time in the Energon universe. And I'm not horribly offended, and I don't think G.I. Joe in the hands of these creatives is sexist. I do think it's an unfortunate inconsistency. And, if we had a lot more of this version of CoverGirl, and we got to know her, maybe we could agree that she is a more emotional character than some characters in G.I. Joe. And I'm not necessarily saying I need to see a man cry in G.I. Joe, but this is both perhaps reflective of the reality in America, the way that men and women behave differently, and also perpetuating it. And I just want to point out, if you feel like I'm going too far with this, Duke has lost his friend too. And he only responds with sort of steely concentration and anger in this issue. And if there is an issue later on where he allows himself a moment to be sad, I'll say, okay, cool, parity, fairness, balance. But all right, Energon universe, I'm watching you. Okay, and then lastly, when Tom Riley was at my store, Hub Comics, signing...
was he at your store, Tim?
I mean, we hyped it at the end of so many episodes, and I don't know that a lot of people make it to the end of our 17-hour episodes. So this actually might be news for some people listening to Talking Joe. Folks, 3 days after G.I. Joe issue number 1 was released, artist Tom Riley signed at my store, Hub Comics, in Somerville, Massachusetts. And I asked him, is rock and roll really dead? And then I chuckled and I said, I know you can't tell me, so I'm going to phrase this as a statement and not a question. It sure looks like he's dead. I sure don't like killing, beloved core characters in my favorite comic and also in the first issue. And I forget exactly what he said, but it was along the lines of, I can't talk about it. I can't talk about anything that's happening because I asked him one other question about what's coming up next. And he said, I can't talk about it, which is the correct answer. But he did say something like, he sure looks like that was pretty final at, in the end of issue 1. So, and now that we've talked about page 1 for 25 minutes, Mark, what else would you like to talk about?
Well, page 1, panel 4, Geordie Belair knocks most things out the park. I think possibly on this panel 4, there's a slight misstep in terms of the body of rock and roll. Hit the colorization there of him on the floor. It does get lost into the background along with the rest of the murky rubble. But in between the Cobra.
4?
Yeah. The one with Mercer clutching,
even one as pretty as yours.
yeah, even as pretty as yours. In between the Vipers in the middle, there is a body there. There is a head which is coloured in black. You can see a boot sort of poking out. It's a body shape. That is the body of rock and roll, but coloured in such a way that it really disappears into the background.
I agree. I agree on both counts. That Geordie Belair usually knocks that out of the park, and this corpse ? In this one panel disappears.
So in terms of what happens next, we get Duke in this amazing splash page, being particularly heroic, and again continuing the tradition that has been established for this issue for this series of swear words being bleeped out in interesting and different ways. Mercer, I hate this guy. I love Mercer. He's great. And they blast Duke, but Duke is, number one action hero, jumping from that downed fang. He's not letting missing propeller blades get the better of him, jumping from the falling fang through the window of the scientific facility into Mercer's face and knocking him down.
But on page 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, when Duke knocks Mercer down, we're not seeing it in that building after the fang crashes. We're seeing it as a hologram projected from Cobra Commander's wrist device. So that's a cool transition from one place to another, but also shows us that Destro and Cobra Commander are watching this fight happen live and are reacting to it and maybe changing their plans because of it. And then I sort of wondered if this was foreshortening. Excuse me. I wondered if this was foreshadowing on the bottom of page 4 when Cobra Commander says, "Your man Mercer may or may not live today, but there's nothing for us. But there's nothing to worry about." I thought, oh, is this looking ahead to this very issue? Are they going to kill off another character? Is Joshua Williamson going to kill off, having now killed off a Joe? Is he going to kill off a Cobra? Is Mercer going to get killed in a couple of pages? And then I'm jumping ahead to page 9. He gets shot 1, 2, 3 times by Clutch in the back with one of these Energon rifles. Zap, zap, zap. Zap, zap. Okay, well, I see 3 blasts going through him, and I see 3 sort of ovals for where the rifle fired, but I see 5 sound effects. So I don't know if it's 3 shots or 5. But anyway, let's say 3. Mercer gets shot through his chest by 3 Energon blasts. And I thought, okay, well, he's dead. And yet, at the bottom of that page, he's just running away. And he says, "Go, go, go, get to the roof." And then
Tim, look at the character that Clutch is shooting. Does he have visible shoulders and forearms, or are they covered up with a uniform?
Okay, that's just a regular Viper.
It's just a regular Viper being shot.
Okay, I'm uncapping my pen, and I'm changing some notes on my piece of paper. I'm writing Mercer alive, comma, it's a Viper, and I'm crossing through where I wrote, "Aw, Mercer." And then I'll cross out where it says, "Wait, Mercer not dead?" Okay, good.
Very good. But yeah, that sort of does echo something that happens back in issue 1, which I don't have in front of me to get the right line of dialogue, but it's something Mercer says something like, that Cobra Commander is nuts. And clearly, his troopers are very weary of him and, don't trust him to have their necessary best interests at heart. And clearly that is the case that Cobra Commander isn't overly concerned with Mercer here and setting off those, explosive devices on the lasers. I don't think he cares necessarily one way or the other about who lives, who dies out from that mission. He's much more interested in kind of the statement that he's making.
Yes, this Cobra Commander is pretty evil and terrible. And rather than take the blame that I wasn't looking at these character costume differences more carefully, I'll blame it on Tom Riley, and I'll say, I wish that Mercer's new costume for issue 1, which is more Viper-ish, was a little more distinct from the Viper costumes. Okay.
I found the line of dialogue from issue 1. He said, Mercer says, if they get if they get away, you'll have to deal with that psycho commander.
So something else happens in this scene, this battle that Cobra Commander and Destro are observing via glove hologram. Actually, it's technically after, because Cobra Commander turns off his glove hologram.
Yeah, with a little dink, which is what you can see on the screen at the moment. Just that tiny little pink triangle above Cobra Commander's wrist as he's turning off his hologram. After
he mentions that Mercer may or may not live today, and he says, "But there's nothing to worry about. The cavalry is on its way." And on the next page, on the second panel, there's a close-up, and the camera is on the ground. So we're looking straight on at three pairs of boots approaching. And maybe you subtly note that these boots and ankles are a little slender compared to other boots and ankles that Tom Riley draws in this comic. And Duke,
what a fantastic panel, Tim. What a brave panel, just to show boots and ankles and to be executed in such a way you go, yeah, those boots and ankles are a little feminine. Fantastic.
No, absolutely. Folks, we are not joking. That is one of those panels that when you're 10 and you decide you want to draw comics and you're thinking of, Batman and Wolverine splash pages and cool covers and like Batman yelling at the Joker and Wolverine yelling at Cyclops, it could not occur to you that you would ever want to draw or be asked to draw a panel like this, where it is just boots and ankles walking, but sort of walking with some purpose, right? That this isn't like a casual stroll down a hallway of a science lab. Duke elbows Mercer in the face, cracking some of his helmet. And then there's a panel of a scientist. When I read this first, I actually thought this was Duke because he looks like Duke. He's got the same face and hair. Although, again, I guess we've observed now that I'm not good at looking at people's shoulders because this guy's definitely wearing a lab coat and not Duke's costume. But anyway, there's this scientist on the ground. He's all torn up and covered in debris, and he's sort of looking up over his shoulder at us. And in from the foreground on the top right is the tip of a weapon starting to glow blue. And then there's this great moment. And I had forgotten about this. And this is something that I like that writers do. Writers keep track of who knows what, when in complex stories. Like, no, your character can't say that because they don't know that yet. Or no, your character hasn't met so-and-so yet, so they wouldn't know to go, ask that character for help or know that so-and-so's betrayed them. There's this panel here on page... What page are we on? With the boots.
5, I think.
Thank you. Duke has cracked open part of Mercer's helmet and sees a face. And Duke says, "I know you." And I thought, oh, right. I know who Mercer is because, this series is written like third person omniscient. I know what everyone's saying and thinking and doing, and I can go anywhere that Joshua Williamson wants us to go. We just cut to Antarctica and we're there. Duke only knows what Duke knows and a little bit of what Hawk knows. And Duke didn't know that Mercer was on this mission. I did. And it's a great panel because Mercer looks so indignant that he's on his back. He's just gotten elbowed in the face, and he's a bigger, tougher, maybe not tougher, bigger guy than Duke. But then it changes. There's an abrupt shift. And once again, Jordi Belair totally turns the feeling of the scene with color, because in that next panel, it's all blue except for some white highlights and a sound effect, zap. And Duke is looking up, and man, speaking of, strong compositions, not only can Tom Riley draw a panel of 3 pairs of boots walking, he can also crop along someone's face, cropping their eye out of the shot so that it isn't awkward, right? You just focus on the one eye that you do see. And Duke says, "What?" And then it turns out that they're shooting the wounded. And you have this by volume, it's a splash page, but pages, is it 6 and 7? 6 and 7 are a spread, and the top half of both of them are one sort of double-sized half splash, and then there are 4 panels below them across the 2 pages. And these 3 female Cobra troopers are walking through the rubble, blasting down at the ground. And then Mercer says, "That's what Valkyries do, numbnuts. They send the wounded on the battlefield to Valhalla." And I thought, cool.
So, Tim, I think this is where I pause and note that Williamson is getting the inspiration here from the classified toys, and both in terms of using the opportunity to have this new toy / character appear in the comics for the first time, but also taking inspiration from the description of these characters, and nowadays we don't get file cards for most of these characters, but we do sometimes get a little bit of a blurb on the Hasbro Pulse page where they are revealed and available to order. And on the Valkyries description on Hasbro Pulse, it says, "The Cobra Valkyries stalk the battlefields as choosers of the slain, ushering any enemies who cross their path straight to Valhalla. These Cobra troopers are not to be underestimated or trifled with." And interestingly, Cobra Commander here describes them as "my own personal guards" on the previous page. So they're like his elite troopers, his elite guards, and sort of putting into mind, for example, real world instances where perhaps dictators have got their own personal guards, and beyond that, female personal guards. And I'm thinking particularly of Colonel Gaddafi in real life, who had a personal guard of elite female troopers.
Mm-hmm.
So Stalker is on the ground here. He is going to be one of the chosen to be slain by these Valkyries, lying on the ground. Yeah, and we speculated quite how badly wounded he was from that grenade last time round, if you remember. And this Valkyrie is leveling her laser rifle at him, and he's not really in much of a position to do very much to defend himself. And he is rescued by his savior of the Baroness. Again, it's kind of talking to kind of what has been established in the pages of the last issue, where Stalker and Baroness did not get off on the best foot. When they first encountered each other, they had that kind of dialogue where they were sort of a bit bumping heads together. So yeah, it's interesting and ironic here that Baroness is the one who sort of leaps in as his savior, defending him and knocking the Valkyries to the ground.
I was worried that Williamson was going to kill off another 1982 character, one issue after killing off another, and also I was mistaken and thought that Mercer was dead. I guess that hadn't happened yet. That happens on the next page, but it doesn't happen. And I thought, man, Williamson. Who's Joshua Williamson think he is? Daniel Warren Johnson killing off like 5 Transformers and the first 5 Autobots in the first 5 issues of Transformers. I'm glad that Stalker's alive, and I was struck on the next page, on page 9. That's the one where Clutch does fire the weapon at a Cobra Viper. That page has 10 panels, and there are not a lot of shortcuts in comics. You can draw fewer backgrounds. You can black out things in shadow. You can choose to draw less detail if that sort of makes you comfortable, or if there just isn't time. Sometimes drawing a splash takes more time than drawing a bunch of panels, because the splash dictates a lot of detail, like a big fight with a lot of characters in a complicated environment. Sometimes drawing multiple panels on a page might be more time consuming than drawing a splash. Because a splash might just be a cool, head and shoulders shot of Captain America, like pointing his finger and saying, Avengers Assemble, with like not much background. And that's kind of just one big panel. Here's a Tom Riley page with...
Do you think the A stands for France?
Yeah, yes. I was referring to that without referring to that. One of my favoritist and also least favorite. You know what? I'll say this. As a page, I like it. As a final page, this is from Mark Millar's Ultimates, folks, back in like 2003. As a final page of a comic, I don't like it. Anyway, I also don't think that final pages of comics should be splashes. I think, like Larry Hama G.I. Joe, final pages of comics should have many panels on them so you can squeeze out all the story that's possible. Okay, this page 9, Riley draws a guy shooting a guy, 2 guys looking at a hologram, a close-up of a wrist device, a guy looking at his gun, close-ups of other guns, and then 2 guys running out of a hallway, right? And there's some 2-point perspective, and a guy hurling his gun away because it's going red line. And I just appreciate that in an era when most comics have 5 or 6 panels per page, just as a broad average, because stories are more decompressed. There's less dialogue than there used to be, and the reader wants to enjoy sort of more art, and the artists want to draw bigger, and then they can sell their original pages for more if they've drawn them on paper. And the more panels you have in a comic, the sort of denser the read is. If there's an issue of G.I. Joe and it's 20 pages and it's 20 splash pages, you might read that really fast. But I just got to this page and I thought, man, a lot happens on this page. I really like that. Even if sort of as a story beat, 4 of the panels are all hitting the same note, that 5 of these different laser rifles are starting to beep. And in the case of one of them, the Valkyrie who's holding it sees it. And it also builds tension, because it's not just that Clutch sees his weapon is about to blow up. Is that one on the ground over there, one on the ground on that corpse, one over there that the Valkyrie is holding, one and another over there by some broken glass, right? They're all beeping. And this is smart because from a writing perspective, this distraction gives that Viper and Mercer the time they need to run. So I'm not saying this is the best page of the issue. I'm not saying that Tom Riley worked any harder on this page than he did on others necessarily, but I do appreciate just how much is on this page. Mm-hmm. And for, it's got Cobra Commander and Destro, it's got Clutch, it's got some backgrounds, it's got an action panel. I sometimes play this game. If I was to buy 1 page of original art from any issue, what would it be? And I sometimes think, well, what's the obvious one? Oh, page 2. Is it page 2? With Duke in the Fang, right? Which is the sort of 2/3 splash, right? But there's not a lot of background there. And, I like that. It's cool, but it's a Joe in a Cobra vehicle, which is a little weird. I don't know if I want that on my wall, but maybe page 9, because there's so much story. Mm-hmm.
I was looking at Tom Riley's art on his art dealer's website, and there's a lot of great stuff there from Duke at very good value. If you're an art collector, do head on over there and have a look. A lot of great pages still left over from Duke, and one of the ones that appealed to me was that page that we had talked about during that pit invasion, where sort of there was a lot of cutting in between sort of action sequences of sort of Duke and the Baroness, and rock and roll punching, one of the bloodhounds and all these kind of things. Again, a lot, one of those pages where there's a lot going on. Something, Tom Riley does very well. So these laser rifles blow up, take out what looks to be most of the top part of this scientific building, and I think it looks like a lot of the Cobras get blown up as well. We only specifically see three cobras getting away. Mercer, a viper, or is it? And it looks to be from the silhouette one of the Valkyries as well. So I guess most of those cobras don't escape from the mission. And Tim, what did you think when you saw the vehicle that the cobras were escaping on?
I thought, hey, cool. I always forget what it's called. What's the Cobra transport helicopter from G.I. Joe Yearbook 2 called?
Aspid.
Okay, but that name came much later, right?
Yeah, the name was introduced in the pages of ARA from IDW.
Okay. I thought two things. I thought three things. One, cool, the Cobra transport helicopter. And then I thought, I think this is the first time we've seen this in the Energon universe. I have to ask Mark if that's true. And then I thought, okay, this looks a little different than we've been used to. Has Tom Riley changed the shape or proportions a little bit? And do I think I see a little bit in its angles that it slightly more resembles now the more recent Cobra Fang, which got slightly retooled? Wasn't there a Cobra Fang release like a year ago for the 4-inch scale?
Yep.
And they changed
sort of slightly modified, retro branded, I think it was.
Yes.
Fang. Yep.
So Mark, is this the first time we've seen this in the Energon universe?
I believe it is, yeah. And with the sort of a slight, Energon universe / classified tweak to it, yeah. So it's sort of
it's a little more angular. It's got a little bit more stuff on the top. So I thought that was cool, and it's been 5 minutes since I have said something nice about Tom Riley's art and technique. Hey folks, look at how Tom Riley inks the moving rotor blade of a helicopter. He just draws a zigzag line, and then he like moves his pen, and then he draws a zigzag line. So these like sections of zigzag. And I can't remember when this was, but at some point, many episodes ago, I think we were talking about, I don't know if it was a Devil's Due issue or an IDW issue, but someone had drawn, I think, a helicopter, and you could see the rotor blade. And I said, no, that looks like the helicopter is just, the engine is turned off, but this helicopter is flying or landing. So there needs to be like a circle with some blurry color or some like swooshy lines. And this is another way to do it. And I like it.
Very good. And I'll make a prediction here for posterity. I predict that I think before too very long, we probably will see an Aspid in toy form. It's the number one toy that the G.I. Joe collectors want that has never been made before. And with Super 7 having the O-ring license, I think it will be on a short list of things that they will want to get to. So my prediction is before 2025 is out, we may have some hints that an Aspid may come into fruition. Maybe they'll do a crowdfunder or something. No insider knowledge beyond sort of knowing the public information that is out there.
Page 11 is wordless, and that doesn't happen a lot in G.I. Joe comics. It doesn't happen a lot in comics. This terrible thing has just happened. The Joes have suffered a terrible loss in terms of personnel, and also they failed the mission. They didn't protect the Cybertronian piece, and Mercer gets away, and here's this first panel is great because not only is there rubble, but on a piece of rebar, there's a Cobra helmet. So you can have a moment of feeling sort of smug satisfaction, like you got not your revenge, but you got something, right? Well, at least we took out one Cobra soldier or one Viper. Although actually, based on what Mark just said, it seemed like Cobra Commander took out this Cobra Viper. And in that rubble, colored the same color as the rubble, there is a dead viper. So then there's another panel, and then Duke starts to emerge, and he has emerged, and he looks away at the helicopter, and then there's this panel of him looking upset, and he is scratched and bloody and torn, and he is looking upset. And just to compare this to the very first panel of the whole issue, he's not crying. Okay, I'm done with that. What a powerful page. No sound effects. It's not just that there's no dialogue. It is a wordless page, and it's moving and sad, right? Because it starts kind of good, like, yeah, we got the Cobras. Oh, and then we move on to sort of this sort of an epilogue page for the mission where we check in with each person. And I bet, Mark, that you were most struck by this reference to CoverGirl's injuries.
Yeah, that's right. There's this fairly shocking panel of CoverGirl in the ER room or wherever it is that they are, and it says CoverGirl got burns from whatever those lasers were. Our people have never seen anything like it, and she's sort of like screaming out in pain. They're sort of covering her up in bandages, and she's got these burns up and down all of her arms, and it's just an interesting dynamic because of particularly of who the character of CoverGirl is, that she's this former model. She's got her code name because of how beautiful she is, and here she is with these devastating injuries to her body.
I'm just gonna ding Tom Riley for giving CoverGirl very nice nails. I feel like she might comb her hair and use really expensive shampoo, even though she's in a top secret anti-terrorist military strike force. I do think she'd have very trimmed nails, considering she's like building tanks with wrenches and screwdrivers. Okay, Tom Riley, all is forgiven. Clutch is missing, presumed dead, and I am a naive reader, and I often take the writer at their word. And I thought, it's Joshua Williamson.
Another one, Mercer. Now, no.
And then I noticed on the final panel, with a word balloon that loops around, the tail loops around and goes into the doorway, which I love, right? We're at the hospital, and there's this red plus symbol on the wall next to the door, which is supposed to make you think of the Red Cross and make you think of, ambulances and medics and hospitals. And if you are drawing a city or a bunch of buildings, and you need one of them to just immediately be a hospital, you draw a plus sign on it. And if you're using color, you make it red. And everyone knows that that's a hospital. And I know, because I'm a Transformers fan, that not just anyone or everyone or anyone is allowed to just put a red plus sign on something and say it's like an ambulance, like Ratchet in Transformers, right? Transformers no longer puts a red plus sign on Ratchet's shoulder because the American Red Cross and the International Rescue Committee, the International IIRC, the International Committee of the Red Cross, ICRC. Anyway, the Red Cross has that symbol, and so in Transformers land, some artists have slightly adopted replacement, so that when you see Autobot Ratchet, who transforms into an ambulance, there's sort of like 4 dots or 4 triangles on his shoulder, which make you think it's a plus sign, but it's not a plus sign, and you go, ambulance. So I looked at this and I thought 2 things. One, it's not the normal unitalicized Red Cross symbol, but also it's got 3 stripes and it's italicized. And I wonder if Tom Riley is making a sort of G.I. Joe version, because the G.I. Joe logo is an italicized word with 3 stripes. So that's fun.
Yep. Very good. And then we're in, and then sort of we step through the door of that hospital room into the scene with Duke being treated alongside Baroness, and there's Hawk. Again, it's like sort of a series of firsts here. And he said they called themselves Cobra. Must be a new group. We have no intel on that name. shows how early on we are in this sort of G.I. Joe Cobra relationship. Duke recognized Mercer, so he recognized him from the pages of Duke, where he encountered him, I think, in the very first issue where he got chucked out of Destro's
at the Mars building.
The Mars building, and then probably again towards the back end of it was when he tracked down Destro and had that fight with the Bat. I suspect he might have been there too as well, but don't know 100% off the top of my head, but I think he was. And so he recognizes Mercer as Destro's head of security. Wants to bomb Mars Industries to hell. But Hawk says, no, I can't just storm a foreign diplomat's home. So this is an interesting dynamic. They're calling Destro a foreign diplomat. That would, normally imply that they're like an ambassador or something. So does he mean unusual turn of phrase?
Is that the wrong word? Did he mean to say, I can't just storm a foreign national's home? Someone who is from a different country but is here? Also, Mark, what about issue 5 of Destro? Hawk made a deal with Destro.
Flag. It was Flag that made the deal, wasn't it?
Sorry. Also, isn't Risk's name Link? Okay. A list of Tim mistakes. The nurse in panels 1 and 2 who's bandaging or sewing up Duke, Tom Riley has drawn a specific person, and I don't think that this is necessarily someone that Tom Riley knows, and I don't think this is like someone who works at Skybound. I think Tom Riley is just drawing a specific person and not a generalized person, because he's a thoughtful character designer, and some people have one style of glasses or one style of hair or one facial type or body type, and he draws a particular person. And I always appreciate when background characters in comics are not just a stock face and body type, but someone specific. At the same time, you start to wonder, like, oh, is that someone? Is that someone going to be important? Are they going to get dialogue? Is that like Tom Riley's cousin? And then Baroness says something which might be sort of the theme for the issue or for the arc. She says, if you let revenge drive you, you will fail. And then the new guy, and then Link shows up. What's his name? And Risk shows up.
Risk.
So, Mark, how do you feel about this new character?
In his suit and tie, like a businessman, and with a waistcoat as well. I mean, he's this new guy. He's been created specifically for this series. He's a creation of Williamson and Riley.
There's no toy. There's no toy.
There's no toy. He's been on a few covers. He's a big deal, and as is kind of the one, almost with those kind of new creations entering into an existing dynamic. Sometimes they're given a slightly inflated page count. I'm thinking, I don't know, of like Peter Wisdom coming into the pages of Excalibur as Warren Ellis's new character. I'm sure there are plenty of other examples you can think of. And so,
Kamakura in G.I. Joe 2001.
And so,
he's
entering.
Really. Sorry, go ahead.
He was in. We had this sequence in issue 1, and he's here again, and he's on 1, 2, 3. Okay, maybe only 3 pages, but it makes a big.
Compare that to how many pages, say, Stalker is in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Right. And also he's on a front cover for the most important front cover of this issue, well, the most scarce one. We get this flashback as to how badass he is in this red panel, that he joined the CIA after some time in the Air Force. He's a cage fighter in his spare time. He used to be risk assessment for dangerous missions before he entered the field himself, and spent some time overseas tracking down different arms dealers, like last issue when he was warning people off from trading with Destro. He's a bored rich boy looking for trouble. So, is he sort of this, slightly, he's introduced as a brand new character, slightly overpowered by the sounds of things. Is he going to, push and rub people the wrong way, including Duke, including potentially the readership? We'll see. He is in this flashback panel, fighting a bunch of ninjas, which makes you think of the Arashikage. Has he potentially run into them before? And someone posited an interesting idea online, which is, could we potentially be seeing here Snake Eyes before Snake Eyes? That we're not going to be introduced to Snake Eyes as a main character, but possibly Risk could be Snake Eyes. Will have the accident, become that black-clad, he's wearing black, masked ninja. He certainly seems to have a lot of the skill set already. And if he's a bit of a motor mouth who rubs people the other way around, wrong way, perhaps them becoming a silent master might be a swing in a different direction. Interesting area to explore. On this page as well, I'm seeing that close-up of Baroness, where she says, "I've heard of you, bored rich boy looking for trouble. You're one to talk." I'm going to give him a Cockney accent. I don't think he is. "You're one to talk, love. Were all the sexy librarian positions filled, and that's why you've turned to a life of crime?" Nice line of dialogue. Baroness, she has got a little mole on her chinny chin. And I didn't notice this earlier, but Chameleon has also got a mole in the same place. And when you see her appear on all of those different covers and whatnot, people are quite deliberate in the placing and drawing of that mole. So I think possibly there is an illusion, or at least perhaps laying a little bit of area for speculation as about that Baroness Chameleon link.
In this scene, when we first see Duke and Baroness lying in these hospital beds, Baroness has a big bandage on her shoulder, and the strap of her top, sort of her sports bra, is off her shoulder because she has a burn and a big bandage there. And then on the next 2 pages later, after Risk has come in, and Baroness and Risk have this back and forth that you just referred to, she's got her thumb under the strap of her top, and she's fixing it onto her shoulder. And I'm going to guess that that's not in the script, that that's just a bit of physical acting, sort of moving a character where they're sitting and standing, how they're sitting, standing, that Riley invented. And then this is great in that next panel when Risk says, "You're one to talk, love," where all the sexy librarian positions filled. He's looking at her, right? His eye line matches up with her. He's not looking down, but he might be looking down. And Riley has placed the camera right near the Baroness's left shoulder, looking past her at Risk. And she is sitting upright so that in this panel, her breasts, her sports bra, are subtly the focus of the panel, right? Jordie Bellaire does not color it much brighter. There's no spotlight on that. Again, there are no arrows. This is not like an exploitative panel. This is not cheesecake. This is not sexy or distracting. This is just a subtle bit of, to use a film term, camera work and blocking, so that even if you sort of don't see how the Baroness, and she's not showing off for him. She's not how do you phrase it? Sort of pulling her shoulders up to show off her, her bosom. But Riley is subtly reminding us and Risk that the Baroness is a sexy character, and what she's wearing, even though she's beaten up and covered in bandages and in a hospital, right? So how we see her physically, literally in this panel, reflects and is reflected in what Risk is saying to her. And you know, like, it might be funny because it's kind of true. Like, it's not like she was going to apply for a sexy librarian position. It's part of why I'm aware of this visual that I've just described is that an example I used to show students in an issue of Gen 13 from the 90s. There was a 2-issue Gen 13 spin-off miniseries called Gen 13 Ordinary Heroes, and Adam Hughes drew it. And there are 2 panels in a row where Caitlin Fairchild, who's in the green and purple, she's very tall and has big breasts, not just because Adam Hughes is drawing her. And there's a scene where she sees this guy that she used to know, and track down this comic, everyone, and just look at how Adam Hughes composes those 2 panels to, like, sort of do what I was just describing as the subtext of Risk and the Baroness. And then, period, new thought. And then I thought this might happen. Risk tries to talk down Duke because we're getting off on the wrong foot. And he puts his hand on Duke's shoulder and says the wrong thing. And Riley draws such a great, angry, indignant Duke. And Riley is like 20% cartooning here, right? Like, Duke has a big chin. Like, that's a bigger chin than people actually have. Like, look at the next panel. Duke's chin is not actually that big. And like, the sort of cartooning of his mouth and his eyes and those 2 black shapes under each eye, the like muscle flexing under your eye when your eyebrows are up and your eyes kind of bugging out. It's so great. And then crack. So, Mark, I wanted to ask you, what do you think of this, Duke doing this?
Well, it's a bit OTT. It's flying over the handle. You know, they've gone in to show that Risk is someone who's going to cause a bit of tension in the team, and you know, after being punched in the face, he's got this, you know, this smirk on him. He's sort of getting a little bit of a kick out of this. So someone that takes a little bit of delight in the fact that he is annoyed Duke about something as important as the death of his comrade. I'm sure Heavy Metal was a hell of a soldier. An interesting use of language there, because you know, he's getting the name rock and roll, you know, wrong, intentionally or otherwise, and using another genre of music instead of rock and roll. He's using heavy metal, but somewhat ironically, heavy metal was also the name of a GI Joe, and also the name of a fallen GI Joe, one of the Joes that died in Benzene in the pages of A Real American Hero.
So, your point about Risk showing up in ruffling feathers makes me wonder for how long Risk will be the outsider who keeps ruffling feathers. Will there be a scene or an issue where he does something above and beyond, maybe during a mission in front of other people, or maybe by himself, where he sort of proves himself, gains Duke's trust, stops being sort of seen as the jerk, and will that be different for different characters? You know, will some of the Joes he'll win them over in issue 3, and maybe Duke he won't win over for many issues.
Yeah.
Okay, on the next page, I also, just in terms of Duke's extreme reaction here, I like it because it's dramatic and exciting, and the emotional stakes are high. I don't like it because I think that Duke is a smoother operator than this, and I don't think that Duke is a hothead, and I don't think that sort of any Joe would punch another Joe. Like, I think that's a thing we see in movies, but that a lot of people don't actually do in the real world. But also, I have not led a mission where my friend dies, and so I don't really know. And Williamson is allowed to take sort of what we all accept as the Duke character and change it, because this is a different comics universe. So I both enjoyed, because it's like pulpy and dramatic. It's like you're reading an X-Men comic, and I don't know why I always go to Wolverine and Cyclops, but they're arguing about Jean, right? Or they're arguing about Magneto, and like Cyclops punches Wolverine in the face, and he hurts his hand, and Wolverine says, not a good idea, psych. Don't forget, I got adamantium all over my teeth and my skull, right? I don't know that Cyclops would actually do that. I don't know that Duke would actually do that. But so it took me out of it a little bit. But this version of G.I. Joe can be broader or more pulpy, and at least the scene cuts, and we don't see their fight, because that would be too much.
Yeah, and you don't necessarily need to see the fight either, do you? It's the conflict, the tension is the important thing. And pulpy is an interesting term and way of looking at things, because you've kind of got those pulpy archetypes that if a girl is suffering grief, that she'll cry and have a tear rolling down her cheek, whereas your tough anti-hero whatever can't really process grief in the same way, and instead they'll want to lash out, which is what perhaps Duke is doing here, going back to that original thought, panel 1, page 1 of Cover Girl crying. We cut to Springfield, a nice little town, the home of Cobra and the Aspid returning. They've got the Cybertronian technology, and immediately are thinking about their next steps, the next part of the Cobra plan, and that is to get hold of the brainwave scanner and its creator, Dr. Archibald Monev. I was surprised, Tim, to see the brainwave scanner being brought up in the pages of issue 2 of this new continuity.
Yeah, the brainwave scanner, more than many G.I. Joe elements, feels like it belongs solely to Larry Hama. And, the Weather Dominator shows up in other places. Chuck Dixon used it in the IDW continuity, the Axis and Allies Battle for the Arctic Circle G.I. Joe board game that's new this year refers to it, although it's not a game piece. You don't see it. And I don't say like, well, the Weather Dominator belongs to Ron Friedman, who wrote those 5 episodes. But sort of no one has ever used the brainwave scanner except for Larry Hama, and Larry Hama has used it over many issues and eras of his G.I. Joe book. And so I feel like this would have come a lot later, and B, this is a reminder that so everything is up for grabs, and Williamson, Riley, and the editors can take from every version of G.I. Joe. I also then sort of thought, oh man, are they sort of risking using something? I feel like Hama has used the brainwave scanner too much recently, and in my very, very small unscientific sampling of like 6 people on Facebook, I feel like a few people agree with me. And now a lot of people are reading the Energon Universe G.I. Joe who didn't read the last 150 issues of G.I. Joe that Hama wrote. And so they might not feel like, oh, this again. But I was surprised. And then I thought, oh, is this a new civilian name for Dr. Venom? Is this the first time you get the name?
So yeah, I saw the name and I thought to myself, am I meant to know this name? We're talking about Dr. Venom here. It's the brainwave scanner. It looks like Dr. Venom, but they're using this name, Dr. Archibald Monev. And I did think to myself, am I supposed to recognize that? Is that a name that has appeared that I've forgotten about? And I did research it. It doesn't look like it has been used in comic books before. I think this is the first comic book appearance, but it's not the first appearance of that name. We've seen it in 2 places before. So Dr. Archibald Venom Monev was released carded in a box set with Adventure Team Commander and Man-Eating Plant as a toy in 2010 as an exclusive in the G.I. Joe Collectors Club. And the name also was used when the character appeared in G.I. Joe Renegades, the cartoon. So not the first use of the name, the first use of the name in the comics. And again, talking to this new universe of drawing from G.I. Joe everywhere, essentially, and picking up that name to use in a similar way to the Baroness Anastasia Sisanova picking up that name to use, despite it not necessarily being the one that we're quite as familiar with in the ARA continuity.
And this is a different look for the brainwave scanner, right?
Yeah, I think this is Tom Riley, doing his redesign piece of introducing something new to this universe and wanting to put his own spin on it.
On the previous page, before we see Riley draw it, we see Megatron, but he is knocked out in red. I guess maybe that's not technically a knockout. There's a color hold where all the black lines, the black ink, have been printed as dark red, and then all the fill is a light red. And Cobra Commander is, Destro is saying, I need to know everything. You can't introduce self-destruct mechanisms into my weapons and not tell me. You have to tell me everything. And Cobra Commander says, I won't tell you everything. I have some secrets. And he says, this is something, and this is from something from before our time together. And he's sort of looking down and he's thinking of Megatron. Riley draws Megatron behind him the way that we saw him in the Cobra Commander miniseries, right? Sort of missing part of his face and sort of leaning over, and we can't quite tell that he's missing an arm or two, but he seems to be. And Cobra Commander clenches his fist and looks at it, and you see his clenched fist both in front of him and reflected in his mask, and he says, I need it. We need it.
Precious, my precious Energons.
Very good. And jumping ahead so I can jump back, when Mercer and that Viper and that Valkyrie wheel the shard on a cart out of the Aspid, you see that Viper. And then when Destro says, indeed, while our enemies' backs are to the wall, it is important that we act fast to retrieve the next piece of your design, the brainwave scanner. Destro's walking away, and Cobra Commander's looking at his treasure, this Cybertronian artifact, on the cart. And Riley includes Mercer in the panel with his arms folded. He's made his delivery and is waiting there. And in the distance is the Aspid, and behind everyone is sort of a black shape, which feels like a wall or a hangar. And there's a Viper. And totally innocuous, right? It's like we're at headquarters. There might be some Vipers milling around, or, oh yeah, that's that other Viper that got away. And then in the panel under the brainwave scanner, we see a Viper walking away, but looking at Destro as Destro suggests how they proceed. And then in the next panel, Destro continues and says, and I know just the two teams that we should send. And there's this Viper who's walking away from them in the foreground, but kind of looking back at them. And then we follow him for another two panels as he's sort of creeping around this hallway with a big over-dramatic shadow cast behind him on a hallway that definitely feels like, something is up, right? There's not literally like a spotlight on him. He's not caught. There's just this Riley is sort of editorializing sort of how important he is with the light treatment. And then there's this close-up of a helmet, right? This Viper's just taken his helmet off and is sort of putting the helmet down. And that word balloon says, gasp, damn thing is too tight. And you turn the page, and the final page of the book, Mark, is...
It's Clutch taking off his helmet. He's alive. He hasn't been killed in that explosion. And he is undercover as a Viper. Oh man, Clutch buddy, old pal. What did you get yourself into now?
And so this refers
Zoinks!
back... This refers back to two moments in the story. The one when there's all this sort of turmoil during and after the big explosion at the top of this lab building, and Mercer and a Viper and a Valkyrie get away, and then also Hawk's debrief where he says, Clutch is missing, presumed dead. We'll know more once we clear the rubble. And instead of seeing a photo of Rock and Roll, instead of seeing Stalker in a stretcher, instead of seeing CoverGirl in a stretcher, we see a close-up of Clutch's costume, sort of the padding and chest gear and a glove. And it looks like it could have been Clutch's costume on a perhaps crumpled and dead body. And it didn't occur to me the first time I read this, when I saw this panel, that might be discarded clothing with no one in it.
Mm-hmm.
I assumed we were sort of seeing it under some rubble without the rubble in the way. And so we have a familiar, I don't want to say trope sounds negative, but I don't mean it to. We have a familiar trope, which is we see it in G.I. Joe, we see it in Star Wars, we see it in Dungeons and Dragons, where a hero character is sneaking around the villain location disguised as the villain to figure out what's going on. And we've seen this in G.I. Joe episodes, we've seen this in G.I. Joe issues, and to add to the sense of worry and drama and scale that Clutch is in over his head, and that this is a dangerous mission and sort of a wonderful idea and a terrible idea, what does Riley do? He puts the camera, it's not a film, it's a comic, there's no camera. He puts the camera at a Dutch angle, right? He leans the action at an angle, which is to say on the tripod, he shortens one of the legs. So the up and down of the wall is a diagonal on this image. Clutch is looking over his shoulder, kind of at us, to just sort of add to this idea that he's worried about being found out. And Riley puts a giant Cobra logo on the wall behind and above Clutch, so that Cobra is graphically on this page sort of looming over and leering down at Clutch. Clutch really is sort of in Cobra, and Cobra is over him. And then there's
in over his head, yeah.
Yes, in over his head. And then there's four paragraphs of Tom Riley instead of a letters page. We don't have those yet. 4 paragraphs by Tom Riley, written last month, in a general sense, speaking to his design ethos for character and costume in this new series, plus 4 small images of his character designs for Duke, Baroness, Cobra Commander, and Destro. And having spoken with Riley a couple times now, and also seeing his work in this comic, where he says, I could talk shop for another several pages, but I'm going to wrap it up here. I thought, no, keep talking shop. I would like to know in detail about each decision you made and all the specific influences for, this bit of armor and this fabric and this trim and this color choice.
Yeah. Do you know what I thought when I saw that? I thought, this sounds like a job for Talking Joe. let's get you on and let's talk shop for a few more paragraphs, aka minutes and hours, about these designs and the choices made. Be interesting to hear. A great ending to the issue, and a sort of setting up of what is to come as well. It made me think a little bit about the way that the cartoon would work in dividing up the teams and them going on to the submissions to find the different pieces of a puzzle. So they're talking about dividing into two teams, and Destro knows the two teams to send. Ooh, so that's quite that'd be quite fun. Them going off on those missions and lays the mystery of what will we see next as those teams that he selects. Back of the book, we've also got some sort of, a little bit of that fun, interaction. I'm with Team G.I. Joe, hashtag Team G.I. Joe, or hashtag Cobra, hashtag Team Cobra. Lots of faces of readers who've, sent in their photos via the Skybound Insiders page to provide their photos there. I didn't recognize quite so many people this time round as last time. I saw someone in a Brian Sauer designed Toxo Viper t-shirt, which I think he produced for the what's not assembly required, but their online event. Yeah, their online armor event. Actually, if I I'll turn my camera back on again and do that. This one.
Oh, were you wearing that already? Did you already, when you put out your clothes for the week, Mark, did you decide before reading this issue and prepping for this episode that you would wear this shirt for this day?
I did think to myself, I can do a reveal in the episode, and then that would be a nice, little thing to do for this. So that's what I did. And I also spotted Ryan from Toy Federation, who was a regular sort of G.I. Joe convention goer for his toy stand and his toy shop, which has got a YouTube channel that many people follow, all about the happenings of buying and selling toys, I guess. But apologies if you are one of the Talking Joe listeners featured there. And I've not shouted you out. If that is the case, please do feel free to, give a shout out on the Facebook group and let us know that you've made the pages of this particular comic.
I did not recognize anyone, but I was happy that by how many dogs and cats show up, and there's an ad for the next 3 Energon Universe comics coming out in January that comes after the Tom Riley sketches and before these photos of fans. And just a reminder to G.I. Joe fans who aren't reading Void Rivals, the cover to Void Rivals number 16, which is on sale January 22nd, has Skuckzoid, a Transformers Season 3 alien who shows up in 2 or so episodes, and Pythona, who you should know from the animated G.I. Joe movie. And then there are ads for the 4 collections of the miniseries, an ad for the first collection of Real American Hero, the new Skybound era by Hama, and then the back cover, of course, shows you the covers you can get for the issue you just read. I have gotten into this bad habit, Mark, of when I pick up the new issue of G.I. Joe, Transformers, or Void Rivals, in the catalogs, any of the variant covers which spoil something are blacked out and say, spoiler. And I pick up the issue and I say to myself, don't turn it over, because the B cover or the C cover or the D cover is going to reveal someone who shows up in this issue or something that happens in this issue that you want to read organically when you read the issue. And by then I've already turned it over.
Mm-hmm. So there we go. I think we're basically done with this issue, apart from scoring it. I thought it was another solid one. Really enjoyed it. Was really looking forward to it. Really looking forward to the next issue again. It's more of an there's a lot of action, and then we've got a lot of aftermath as well. It's solid. Like, let's go 8. Why not? So maybe not quite as exciting as a brand new issue 1. I think I gave that 9 last time. So let's go with an 8. I can't wait till January the 15th. when the next issue comes out. And then, of course, we will be covering it.
I don't know if I would give this a 7 or an 8. Everything in it is working, action, story, character, art, color, lettering, design. That said, it's always a little hard to go from an oversized issue 1, which is the exciting rollout and has extra pages, to a plain old issue 2. And this is when we interviewed Joshua Williamson, I asked him sort of what's a good issue 1, or what do you need in a good issue 1, which is a question I would like to ask of more comics writers. And and a follow-up question might be, what do you want out of issue 2? I feel like that's less of an interesting discussion, but I will run with this for a moment. You want to continue the things you have set up in issue 2, in issue 1. Anything you didn't have room for in issue 1, you can now start here, but you also need to, just as the cover should look different, so they don't you don't mistake the two for each other next to each other on the stand. Something about issue 2, there should be a new reveal. So Risk got introduced in issue 1, but we had no sense that he would be a problem in issue 1. But Risk showing up and interacting with Duke, that's a problem. So that's a good example of something that isn't technically new, but that feels new, because it continues what was in issue 1. And so yeah, I think I'll give this I'm gonna 7, 8. I don't know, but it was a good comic.
Excellent stuff. So what else? With all that done, I think we'll start wrapping up. Next time on Talking Joe, we will be talking about the latest issues of G.I. Joe as they come out from Skybound. So the next issue of A Real American Hero from Larry Hama and co. And of course, the next issue of this one when it's out in January. We'll also be releasing the last of our look back at, well, I say the last, there's still a little bit. We'll be wrapping
Sigma
up.
6. We haven't read Sigma 6.
We'll be wrapping up our. I said it again. We have our World War III finale from Devil's Due era, and I'm sure we've got plenty of fun and surprises besides that. Like we dropped that interview with G.I. Joe and Marvel legend Rick Parker last week or so, where we talked about both his recent work, but also his time working back at Marvel in the 1980s and specifically on the G.I. Joe book. So if you've not caught that one, that's a good one to go back and discover. You can find Talking Joe in the usual places. The Talking Joe website, talkingjoe.co.uk, has links to those places, including Facebook, where we are having postings of all sorts of news and discussions. We're on Twitter, Instagram, and more besides, like on Patreon, patreon.com/Talking Joe, where our backers like Richard, Sam, Bill, Justin, Christopher, Rob, Shane, Simon, Chris, Joe, Craig, Frank, Mike are getting early access to episodes as well as some exclusive content. Tim, where can people find you when you are not talking to me about G.I. Joe?
At my blog, where I write about G.I. Joe, arealamericanbook.com. On our YouTube page, my creative partners and I post funny and smart video essays about television and film history. That's Atomic Abe Productions. And at my brick and mortar comic book store in Somerville, Massachusetts, Hub Comics.
Very good. And if you've ever wondered about whether you should go and visit the Assembly Required convention in Des Moines, Iowa in November, then why not head on over to the Real American Book website where Tim has released his write-up of this year's most recent events, along with all sorts of photos and stuff. As you know, that's where we recorded the Larry Hama and Ron Wagner interview panel. So yeah, do go and check that out too. But I think with that last thing there said, we are done. Finally. And before we go, I would just like to remind you that
Nobody Beats Talking Joe, an international podcast.
laters.